So, so actually we are going to start with the databases and we are going to start with SQL. So right now I will tell you the main thing, like why actually people are interested in data analytics. And if you are interested in data analytics, why you need SQL. So just let's take an example. So suppose there is a company, Swiggy. Now Swiggy has different type of things. Like Swiggy has Instamart also, and Swiggy has food delivery as well. So now let's take an example of food delivery. So when you register on Swiggy, at that point of time, you give some details there. Like you give your name, you give your Google account, you give your phone number, and different things that they ask, and you register on it. After getting registered, you are ordering some food and stuff. So when you are ordering some food and stuff, if you are a new person, they give you some offer kind of thing. If you are an old person, then also they will give you some offer kind of thing. But right now, all the offers that you are using, all the foods you are ordering, all the vendors that are there, all the delivery partners that are there, all the restaurants that are there, all these things are a form of data. So if you are ordering on any restaurant, at the same point of time, your details, restaurant details, delivery partner details, everything is getting saved somewhere. So now, why actually a data analyst is required for a business perspective? So now, when your all the details are getting stored somewhere, at the same point of time, this data is being collected. And when this data is being collected, this data is collected to a particular place. Now you cannot keep your data on on an Excel file, or you cannot keep your data directly on a file kind of system. At that same point of time, you need something that is a place where you can store all these kinds of data. So that place is actually known as database. So every company has its own database. So if you are talking about any company XYZ, they will have their dedicated database. Now, this database and the size of database depends on different parameters. But right now, for our basic understanding, we just have to understand that there is something known as database, in which we will store our data, in which we'll store our information. So now, right now, my first question to all of you is, like, what do you understand by data? Like, according to you, what can be a data? Like, what kind of data we store, or what actually a data is? Okay. People are saying facts. People are saying stored information. People are saying piece of information. Okay. So now my question is, suppose, suppose you are a data analyst. Suppose you are a data analyst who want to do some analysis on data. And suppose you have to do an analysis on Swiggy. Suppose you have to do an analysis on Swiggy, and your analysis is sales of Swiggy are getting down by 50%. For example, sales of CD are getting down by 50%. So what data you will observe to do the analysis on it? Like what kind of data you will analyze? Just tell me. So people are saying customer order info. Nice. Be very active in the class. I can promise you by the end of 15 lectures, you will be a person who can solve any kind of problem in SQL. So people are saying sales and revenue. Nice. Sales data. Okay, people are saying total sales by Swiggy. Like, just tell me, if you already know that Swiggy's sale are getting 50% down, then why you will look at total sales by Swiggy? first you have to look is percentage wise distribution in different locations. For example, if overall sale is getting hit by 50%, you can check like for different locations, what can be the distribution of sales so that you can get a clear picture where actually the sale is getting down. Second thing, you can look for order time and delivery time. Order time and delivery time. Like what is the difference between order time and delivery time? Is there any issue with this timings and all? So that people are getting late delivery and they are not ordering. Third thing will be food quality. So you will check food quality with the help of reviews and feedbacks. Reviews and feedback. So when you actually put a review and feedback, when you are ordering a food and you have actually ordered it, at the same point of time, they ask you for review. They ask you for feedback kind of thing. That feedback and reviews also getting stored somewhere. And that is also a part of analysis. Now, price of food. Very good, Pratik. So, price of food. Has restaurant changed the price in recent days? Do they have like increased the price because of which people are not ordering? Delivery charges. Delivery charges also a very important thing. Like, do Swiggy have increased delivery charges? So, with all these kind of parameters, with all these kinds of parameters, you will do an analysis. You will do an analysis. But on the bigger picture, all these kinds of data are stored where? Tell me. All the data that you people have told me right now, where this data is getting stored. So this data is getting stored in database. And that database is Swiggy's database. So till now, we have no clue about SQL. We are just talking about databases. So this is the data and this is getting stored inside databases. Now, after this database, on the bigger picture, database is there. But what you think? All the data can be stored in a single table. So I will tell you the concept of table now. So for example, suppose database is a bigger picture. And inside that database, there are, for example, 10 tables. Just take an example. In the bigger picture of Swiggy's database, there are 10 tables. Now tell me, can we store all the information in a single table? Can we store all the information in the single table? The answer is we can store all the information in the same table, but that is not a correct way. That is not a correct way. Because it will include a lot of duplicacy. Now, second question. Can we store this data? Can we store this above all these data into a file system? Into form of files? Tell me. No, because if you will store them in the form of files, you will not be able to do analysis on it. So now, on the bigger picture, we know that database is there. And inside database, there are some tables. But before this data, like after this database and before this tables, there are types of databases. Like types of databases. So there are different types of databases. But we have to be very sure on which kind of database we will perform the operations. So if you are talking about a database in our scenario, in our world of data analytics, we deal with relational databases. In our world, we deal with relational database. So there are file database management system, there are relational database management system, there are database management system, but our thing will work on relational databases. So our first picture was database. Our first picture was database. Inside that picture, our second thing was relational database. Now, what do you actually understand by a relational database? Who will tell me what actually a relational database is? So, relational database is a database in which data is stored in the form of tables. So relational database is a database in which data is getting stored in the form of tables. And what actually a relation is? So now you have a term called relation. So in relational database, there is a term called relation. So what this relation actually means? It actually means intersection of row and columns. Intersection of row and columns. And intersection of row and column will make a table for you. So we will work on databases and we will work on a specific database, which is RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. And in that RDBMS, there are some kind of tables in which we actually store our data. Now, tell me, we are good with databases? Just please turn off your... Okay. So we are good with databases. We know about relational database. And why relational database? Question is why relational database? So if you will store your data in the form of tables inside relational database, then it will help you for a easy analysis. It will help you to remove data redundancy, which is data duplicacy. Like it will help you to get your data with a clear picture, and it will organize your data. Like your data will be more organized. If you will keep each and everything at a single place, it is not organized. That's why in a bigger picture of database, we store the data in the form of tables so that each table holds a specific information about a subset so that there is organized data with us. Now, if you know about databases, if you know about relational databases, and if you know about tables, then tell me, what is SQL? Then what do you understand by SQL? Mode of communication. Okay, data is organized in readable language. So I will tell you what SQL is. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So for example, if I want to talk with you people, if I want to talk with you, which language I can prefer? If I want to talk with you, I can either choose English, Hindi, Tamil, Urdu, or any language in which we both are comfortable and we both can understand. So if I want to talk to you, I can use any of these language in which we both are comfortable so that we can transfer information from each other. But if you will talk about databases, so databases will not understand this language. They need a specific language so that you as a person or as a user can connect with database and process information from each other. So SQL is a structured query language, which means that this language language will help you to connect with database. So you will be the end user. You will write a structured query language, which is a programming language, and you can connect with your database. So SQL is used for connecting with database and to fetch some specific information from it. So now this is the basic understanding of SQL. Like SQL is used to connect with your database and to fetch information from your database. Now, why it is called structured query language? So it is structured because it follows proper set of rules. It follows proper set of rules. Like SQL query that you are writing cannot be a normal English query. You have to follow a certain set of rules to write your SQL query. That's why it's structured and it's a query language. Why it's a query language? Because you are actually querying with your database to get some information out of your database. So that's why it is known as a structured query language. So everybody is clear till here? Just ping yes in the chat box if you are clear till here. Okay. So if you people are clear with SQL, like what actually SQL is, let's talk about why it's important. Who will tell me why SQL is important? For a data analyst. So SQL is important for a data analyst because you can retrieve specific information from your database. Like database has all the information. Database is a very bigger picture in which you can get all the information that is there. But if you want to get some specific information from your database, if you want to delete your database, if you want to create tables inside your database, if you want to do some particular kind of analysis in your database, for all these things, SQL will help you. For all these things, SQL will help you. So that's why SQL is important, and why it is very important for data analytics, because usually a data analyst or a fresher or experienced data analyst, I'm talking about both the people, fresher as well as experienced. So both of the users use SQL, 60% SQL in their daily data analysis journey. So if you are a person who is a data analyst, you will use 60% of SQL in your daily data analysis journey, because SQL gives you a functionality to do a proper kind of analysis. But for doing a proper kind of analysis, you must be very clear with SQL concepts. And that concepts I will teach you in the upcoming classes. So now, let's talk about more things like why SQL is important. So suppose you have 1,000 rows of data. Now, what do you understand by row? So suppose there is a table in which employee ID column is there, and department column is there, and salary column is there. So what actually a row is? So 101 is employee ID, department is HR, and salary is 5,000. So this particular thing is known as a row. This particular thing known as a row. So for example, there are 1,000 rows in data. Like for example, there are 1,000 rows of data in a table. So suppose you have a table in which you have 1,000 rows. If I want to take out the information of Durgesh Yadav. If I want to take out the information of Durgesh Yadav, then what I will do? So what I will do is I will drop some kind of filter. I will drop some kind of filter here. Like I only want the name Durgesh Yadav. I only want the details of Durgesh Yadav. So you will use some kind of filters, which will filter your 1,000 rows, and you will get specific information about Durgesh Yadav. So in the specific information, after filtering the rows, you are getting 5 rows for Durgesh Yadav. So SQL is used for filtering data. SQL is used for grouping data. SQL can be used for aggregating data. SQL can be used for sorting data, like ascending or descending order, sorting the data. And SQL can be used for calculations. So these are the things for which SQL can be used for on a given amount of data. Is everybody clear? Aggregation means sum, maximum, minimum, count, average. These are aggregations. These are higher level aggregations. These are used on a daily basis, you can say. So everybody is clear till here? Any questions still here? If you are clear till here, just ping yes in the chat box. Okay. So now if you people are clear till here, let's talk about how actually SQL can help you. So suppose, just take an example. There are different type of things in SQL. So right now you know about SQL, you know about database, you know about these things. But how actually data is stored? How data is stored? Suppose first thing that comes into the picture is database. First thing that comes into the picture is database. So now I will give you a step-by-step approach. Suppose I have a company. I have a company, Data City. My company's name is Data City. And in Data City, there are 1,000 employees. So tell me, if I want to, like I have Data City company, and in Data City, I have 1,000 employees. What will be my step first to store my information? What will be my step first to store my information? My first step will be, I will create a database. I will create a database. I told you database is the bigger picture. The first thing you have to create is to create database. So first I will create a database, and I will give a database name as like Data City. After creating the database, what will be my second step? So every time when you are creating a database, listen it very carefully. Every time when you are creating a database, after creating that database, you have to use that database. See, if you have created a database and directly you will go to apply some kind of tables, or you will try to make some kind of tables, that tables will not store in this Data City database, because there can be multiple databases in your server. So first, let's I will give you an example of servers. What are servers? So database servers, because that will give you a clear understanding what I want to say. So suppose there is something known as server, database servers. So you have heard about MySQL Workbench. workbench. You have heard about Microsoft SQL Server. So what actually they are? What actually they are? MySQL Workbench and Microsoft SQL Server. So MySQL Workbench is a tool. MySQL Workbench is a tool on which you write SQL queries. MySQL Workbench is a tool on which you write SQL queries. But suppose, just understand, you are creating a database, you are creating a table, you are doing everything, but you are storing all these things somewhere. You are storing all these things, database and everything somewhere. So why we actually install, like for example, if you want to install MySQL Workbench, for writing your SQL queries, if you only install MySQL Workbench tool, can you create your tables or database if you only install MySQL Workbench tool? No. Akanksha, no. If you will only install MySQL Workbench tool, you cannot store anything there because that is actually a tool on which you are writing SQL queries. But you must need a place. You must need a place where you can store all your databases and tables. You must need a space. So every time if you are downloading Microsoft SQL Server or if you are downloading MySQL Workbench, they will ask you to download server as well. So for MySQL Workbench, you download MySQL Server. And for Microsoft SQL Server, you download your, what it is called, Microsoft SQL Server. So for MySQL Workbench, if you are downloading MySQL Workbench for writing your SQL queries, you first have to download the MySQL Server. So server is a place that is open source for all of you. So it's an open source platform where you can save your databases, where you can store your tables, where you can do anything. So server is basically a location, a higher level location where you are actually dropping your databases, your tables. So suppose, just will give you an example. So suppose there is a class. So that class is a server and there are 30 students in the class. So the 30 students that are in the class are databases, and those 30 students contain some information. That are actually your tables. And if you want to do some operations on your table or your database, you need a SQL language. So every time if you are downloading any tool for writing your SQL queries, you must see, while downloading it, you will always see that first you are downloading a server, then you are downloading a tool. So for creating this database, for creating these tables, you must need a space. You must need an open source space. That's why Microsoft and MySQL Workbench has given you this space in the form of servers, where you can store your data in the form of databases and tables. So this is the thing. So server is a bigger picture. So now let's again come to our example. So everybody is clear what is server. Everybody is clear what is server? Yes, nice. So let's again come to our example. So suppose Data City is a company which has 1,000 employees. So step first will be a creating a database data city. So we will create a database name as data city. Now, just understand, when you will create this database name as data city, where it will get stored? Tell me, where it will get stored? Server. Nice. Correct. Server. And that server can have like 100 databases as well. You'd never know. That server is an open source server. It can have 50, 60, n number of databases. Yes or no? So now how you will identify that you have to work on your particular database. You have to work on your particular data city. So what you will do is, second step, what is it is you have to write use your database name. So I will write use data city. Now, after using this data city database, I will whatever the thing I will do, all these things will stored inside my data city database. So after writing use data city, each and everything that I am going to do forward will get stored inside my data city database. Is this clear to all of you? Now, after using your data city database, like after using your database, what will be the third step? Tell me. Because this is an empty database and you are working on RDBMS. RDBMS. Then what is your third step? Third step is your creating tables. Creating tables. The third step is you have to create your tables. Because all the information that you are going to store, you will store that information inside your tables only. So just tell me, if I have a XYZ database, what can be my tables? So this is my company, Data City, which has 1,000 employees. Tell me what can be the tables here. There can be an employee table in which employee information will be there. There can be a department table. There can be a projects table. There can be a product table. There can be a salary table. There can be n number of tables. And why these different tables are there? Why we are not storing all the information in a single table? Because we want our data to be organized for better analysis. That's why we will not do everything on a single thing. We will try to make different tables so that our data is normalized and our data is redundant. Like if you will talk about what is data redundancy, data redundancy is actually known as data duplicacy. So if you want to reduce data redundancy, you have to keep your data organized in the part of different tables. So that are bigger terms. You don't have to focus on those right now. Just understand the basics of SQL. So now this is the thing. Now you know that you are here. You are at this stage. Now you are at this stage creating tables. Now how to create tables and how to create database. Now you are very eager to know this, how we have to create the database, how we have to create the table. So now we will open our SQL server. So I will give you a video to download SQL server. You can download it from there. So I will open my SQL server now. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so let's share our SQL server. Okay, so this is our SQL server. So I will make you understand how it actually looks like, what it has and everything. So this is our SQL server interface. You can see here, this is SQL Express SQL Server 15.0.2. This is actually the server. This is actually the server in which we are working. The whole this thing that you are seeing right now in your screen is the tool. And this tool is known as Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So this is the tool that you are using. This is the server on which these databases are there. So this is the tool, this is the server, and these are the different databases that are there. Now, once you will start, if you want to start from complete scratch, you have to click on new query. Once you will click on new query, your new tab will open. Now, here we will start our example. So now our example was data city. So first we will create a data city database. So for creating a database, you just have to write create database, and then you have to write database name. So if you want to create any database, you just have to write create database and then your database name. So now if I want to create data city database, I will write create database data city and I will put a semicolon. So what this semicolon means? The semicolon means that you are ending your query here. You are ending this query here. So now I will run it. So if you want to run anything, you have to drag it and then you have to click on execute. So after dragging it, when I have clicked on execute, it is showing that command completed successfully, which means now we have a database name as data city in our databases. So let's check that. See, now we have a data city database here. Just give me a second. I'm getting an important call. Am I audible to you? Okay. So now, oh, sorry, I have opened Netflix. Okay. So now we have created our database, which is known as Data City. Now what we will do is the second step will be use database. So for using your database, you just have to write use and then the name of your database. So use data city. And after executing it, now my compiler, my machine, my tool knows that whatever the things that I'm going to perform, each will be performed on my data city database only. What is the difference between Microsoft SQL Server and see these both are different servers. Some people use MySQL Server for their stuff. Some people use Microsoft SQL Server for their stuff. There is no difference in between. Tools can be little different, but the amount of things that they are doing are same. So there can be little bit difference in the query. See, Oracle is also a database server, Prachi. Oracle is also a database server. Same like MySQL Server, same like Microsoft SQL Server. Oracle is also a database server. Postgres is also a database server. But right now, our main agenda is to work on Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL Workbench because the queries are almost same. So in MySQL Workbench is the like most used database. MySQL Workbench is the most used one. MySQL Server is the most used one. If you are going in any company or anywhere, mostly people use MySQL Server. So let's start the things. So now we have used our data city database. Now each and everything that we will do here will get stored inside my data city database. Now, for example, if I will execute it again, what will happen? Tell me. If I will again execute this line, what will happen? It will give me a error. Why it will give me an error? Because if you have a name data city as a database in your server, you cannot create a same database with the same name. So if you have a data city database, you cannot create one more. It will go give you an error, and it will say that database data city already exists. So if you have a database, you cannot create another database with the same name. If you want to create another database with the same name, you first have to delete the previous one. Then only you can create. So right now we have already a database with data city name. We have these things. Now how to create a table? Now the question is how to create a table. We have created our database. We have used our database. But now the step comes how to create a table. And before actually getting into how to create a table, let's talk about one thing which is known as this thing. Like, for example, I am creating a new database, data city people, and I am running it. Now, for example, in data city people, when I have used underscore here, my command worked successfully. I was able to create data city people. But for example, if I will use a space here, tell me what will happen. Tell me what will happen. Akansha is saying it will give an error. Why it will give an error? See, these programming languages, this SQL, will never understand. It will not create Pratik because it will never understand what this space is. So if you are writing create database, data city people, this database create database statement will not understand that whether it has to create data city or it has to create people, because there is a space in between. So if there is a space, it will throw an error. See, incorrect syntax, which means you cannot create a database like this. But for example, if you have to create a database in which there is a space in between, what you will do? If you want to create a database like this, in which there is a space in between, then what you have to do is, don't use underscore. Just put a square bracket here and a square bracket here. And your work is resolved. Now your new database, if you see here, see, there will be a data city people database. Let's refresh it. So now it will show you. See, data city people. There is a space in between. So if you want to drop a space in between, you have to place this thing inside a square bracket. You can also do this thing. Like double inverted commas. You can also use this thing, double inverted comma. It will also work for you. So now you are clear till here. Let's talk how to create the tables. So just give me a minute. So now if you want to create a table, you have to write create table, and then you have to write the table name that you want to create. And then you have to write open parenthesis and close parenthesis. So this is the thing for creating tables. Now, if you are creating table, you must have to use different things. And that different things are known as data types, and consonants. Sorry, not consonants, constraints. So if you are a person who want to create something like this, like if you want to create a table, you must be aware about data types and constraints. If you are aware about data types and constraint, then you are able, then you are a good person to start with creating the tables. So Pooja has asked, can we write a dot in between? Let's do this for you. It will not work. But for example, if you do it like this, now it will work for you. So if you want to use a dot, you have to put that dot inside this. You cannot use any special character in between two names while creating a database. So for data types and constraints, we will start from tomorrow. Today was just a basic class to understand what SQL is, what database is, and all these things, like what actually these things mean. So from tomorrow's class, we'll start with creating tables and data types and constraints. So that's all for the class today. Thanks for joining the class.